What is up, guys? My name is Cherno. Welcome back to another one of these the review things. We're looking at Demon's Souls today. This is an upcoming game for the PlayStation 5, and there is an official gameplay trailer here that was released on September 17, apparently, according to this video I'm looking at here. Now, Demon's Souls, of course, is an original game that was released in 2009. Well, it's an original game in terms of this is a remake, and I'm really interested to see the differences between the old Demon's Souls and what we have here. Now, I have not played the old Demon's Souls whatsoever. I know very little about it, in fact, but I am excited to see if I can spot any of this kind of new technology stuff that they may have done for the PlayStation 5, because as we know, this is of course a new generation console. Now, it does say here that the gameplay is running at 4K 60 FPS, which is great. It's what you want to see. You want to see that 60 FPS or above frame rate, because smoothness is good. All right, let's dive in and take a look at what this even looks like. I'm just going to make sure that I'm watching this at 4K, and then we can dive in.
Drawn from its vessel. Let strength be granted so the world might be mended. Soul of the lost withdrawn from its vessel.
Okay, my thoughts so far are, there's nothing really to talk about in these scenes and to analyze. It looks fairly standard. I mean, if you break down a frame like this, what are you really looking at? Like, you've got lighting, obviously. I don't see many reflections going on. There is different colored lighting. So for example, there's a lot of yellow light going on here, but there is kind of greenish, bluish, like cooler tones going on for these steps and for this kind of statue over here. There's a little bit of bloom going on over here, and the rest of everything else, like, I mean, the steps here look like there's some kind of ambient occlusion happening. There's, the textures are fairly low resolution here. I don't like the way that some of these things get cut off, as you can see over here as well. But in general, this frame to me doesn't necessarily look like a next generation frame. It looks pretty standard to me. I will point out though that one of the challenges when you're looking at just a still frame or even like a moving frame like this thing here and try to analyze this is that it's very difficult to see what's dynamic and what's not. So this demo could be showing off some amazing like ray traced ambient occlusion that is only possible in the next generation, obviously because of the real-time ray tracing cores. However, this kind of ambient occlusion may as well be baked in, because unless we see something that makes me think it's dynamic, it's not. So when I break down frames and when I look at things like this and give my kind of opinion, it really is me just giving my thoughts. Like, I know nothing. I have not read any articles about the technology this game is using or anything like that. This is me looking at it and being like, huh, what is going through my head as I'm looking at this? And this kind of what these videos are all about anyway. But I will say that obviously we're like a few seconds in here. Okay, lots of effects going on. There's some smoke in the background. Looks pretty cool. Character kind of, looks a bit... Character textures here on the actual clothes look pretty standard. And if you watch her, if you actually watch the sleeve of her shirt here, I guess you can see it moves very, very, very much with the hand. So it's all kind of just a static mesh as far as I'm concerned. There's no real cloth physics going on in that portion, at least. I'm keeping an eye out on for metallic surfaces, because they tend to be very reflective, and I want to see if there's some kind of reflection going on, like with ray tracing or something. Okay, this looks much better to me so far. So I really like the general sense of detail in this scene. Now, the previous scene, was that... So the thing is, because I haven't played the original Demons, this is interesting. If they actually edit in like footage from the old game, and then like I know it's 2009, so I don't think that other scene was from the old game, but that would be an interesting test if they just, like, without you knowing, even show the same scenes, perhaps in like with the different generational leaps of the original Demon's Souls as well as this remake. But this looks great. Like, look at the amount of detail everywhere. I love the warm light here. You can see from the fire, the warm light illuminating all of this stuff. That immediately makes this shot look really good, because you've got the kind of, I guess the composition includes both the cool elements here, but also this kind of warm light. And that just looks really good, that kind of complementary color. These effects look brilliant. I absolutely love the detail in them. the grass and the texture detail you can see is definitely like next gen. So this shot looks great. Best shot I've seen so far in this trailer. I also really liked the way the fire kind of look at that glow, and especially with the motion blur as the camera's turning here. Looks very clean. Very, very clean. Alright, a little bit of reflection there from the puddle. I'm not sure if it's worth going back. Maybe I'll start downloading these videos and going like through some kind of other video player than YouTube, because sometimes going back a frame. Okay, so you can see this light here. Whenever you see lights in surfaces like this, it's very difficult to tell whether or not it's a reflection or not, because technically, if you have a light source, this could just be a specular highlight. There's nothing here that suggests that, okay, that's definitely a reflection. Usually a reflection is when you see actual geometry. When you see just light reflecting, that can very easily be just written in shader code for it to actually reflect the light source, depending on, like, you know, the surface properties of this surface, as well as how big the light is and how far away it is and what kind of light it is. So that's also very difficult to tell. Very soft edges here, which is interesting. I guess that's just the bloom coming in because that area is rather bright. You can see the bloom spilling over here as well. For those of you who don't know what bloom is, it's essentially just anything that's kind of overexposed. Like with a camera, you'd set your exposure, you point it at like, you know, maybe you're taking a photo indoors, but there is a window. You expose the camera for the indoor environment, for your room, but then obviously it's way brighter outside. So what happens is that extra light that comes in, since you're exposing for the room, it gets overexposed. And as a consequence of that, it tends to kind of bleed over into the stuff that is exposed normally, just like you're seeing here. And so the way that they do that in games usually is everything's rendered to an HDR buffer that's capable of like storing more than just the standard dynamic range of like, you know, the 16.7 million different colors that you would have, with each channel being like between 0 and 255. Anyway, I don't want this to turn into a technical discussion, but my point is all of that stuff is basically stored into a separate buffer, and then all they have to do is everything that's above 1 that exceeds that kind of maximum brightness, they just take it and they just blur it out. And that's essentially what you're seeing here. And then they composite it back in. So that's what bloom is. Maybe I'll start talking about certain techniques as I see them. Bloom is something that's been done for 15 years, probably, if not more. Okay, that shield snapping back was a little bit jarring to me. Look at that. That took like 2 frames. Almost looked like it. I like the motion blur. See, they've added motion blur not just to the camera, but to actual objects, which is really cool. That's what I would expect from next gen for sure. Yeah, that was so quick. I guess it was fine. It looked quicker in real life. Look at that as well. The kind of motion blur and then suddenly sharp again. I like the foliage and the grass. It looks a little static to me, but the detail is very impressive for sure. Beautiful fire effects in this game. The characters, so far my least favorite part of this is the characters. It's interesting because, like, you know, when we looked at Last of Us Part 2, like those characters were amazing, and actually Ghost of Tsushima, I also really liked the characters as well. But other than that, like most of the stuff that I've seen, like the characters are usually weak points, which is why I get really excited when I see a really good character animation. I mean, we did look at a Wukong. I think, to be fair, most things that we've looked at have had pretty good characters, but character animation is really difficult. That's why, like, when you find a good character artist, when you find someone who's really good at developing characters, animating them, you know, doing all of that stuff, you usually really hold on to that person, at least in the industry. Because it's not an easy job. It's a very kind of narrow speciality, but the people who do that really well are, you know, usually very highly sought after, and you can see why, because it's difficult to do. Even with, like, you know, modern techniques of using motion capture for like pretty much anything, it's still not as straightforward as you might think. What I'm getting though, and again, I haven't played the original game, but what I'm getting here is maybe what they've decided to do, because it does feel like a lot of the animations with like the different, you know, sword animations and the combat stuff and the way that he switches, like even putting the shield away, how that was super quick. That may just be like a little bit of, you know, that might just be playing to the original game, because it feels a lot more like a video game to me, you know, and maybe they wanted to keep elements of that, even though nowadays, you know, a lot of people would shoot for something a lot more realistic feeling, if that makes sense. Nice sparks. Good audio as well. I like the audio. All of these games have had really good audio. Really good kind of volumetric effects going on here. I'm not sure exactly what it is. I saw it earlier as well, like with the fog. It kind of, you know, you have this kind of cathedral, I think, that he's walking through, and it's obviously quite abandoned and quite dirty and quite dusty. So one of the best things you can do in this case, especially to add to the atmosphere, is to basically, you know, create some dust. Like if this was a movie, if they were shooting a movie, they'd be spraying cans of like dust or having like a smoke machine or something like that, just so that when the lights actually hit that, it gives you that atmosphere of like a smoky, hazy kind of environment. And obviously, you know, with video games, that's something that you want to do if you can. And I am noticing them doing that here, as well as you can even see little specks flying around, little dust particles. That's also a really important detail that makes this environment feel really nice. And the aesthetic I'm getting here isn't necessarily like a photorealistic kind of aesthetic. Kind of like some of the scenes in Ghost of Tsushima were really good. Like you pull out photo mode and like the grass just looks real and everything off in the distance looks amazing. This I'm getting more of kind of like a dungeon crawler kind of arcadey kind of, you know, almost like Diablo or something. Kind of like an actual video game vibe, which is cool too. Obviously they're different, completely different aesthetics. Oh, that's a nice looking character. Notice how balanced everything is. It's really difficult to tell if they're using some kind of global illumination or like light bouncing. I feel like they probably are. Again, really difficult to tell. But I think one of the things you can look out for is how well the character feels like he's part of the scene. So it's kind of like if you're, you know, compositing something in After Effects or in Photoshop, and you basically, you know, you cut out a photo of you, or maybe you're on a green screen or something, and you composite that into an environment, right? Like, it's obviously a lot of work to get you to feel like you actually were part of that original photograph. So, like, you know, you'd have to make sure the shadows are all in the right place, the lighting's all correct, the colors match, you know, and obviously in video games, that's a very common problem as well. I mean, you have original lighting to work off of, so it's not like trying to take an existing still and then composite something there and try and match the lighting just by guessing. It's a bit different for video games, but still, it's a bit of a challenging job. And without global illumination, without any kind of light bouncing, it definitely becomes difficult to get a character or even an object to feel like they're part of the scene. Because obviously, in a real situation, if you did have light coming from a certain direction and then bouncing off walls or whatever, you would see that in the final object that you were rendering. And that's what we see here. Like, he looks like he's part of the scene really well. And I'm not sure if that's necessarily global illumination, but that is something that definitely sticks out to me. I think the overall lighting engine is just really nice. I love those shadows as well, they look great. Oh, that's it. You died. Alright, here we go. Yeah, really detailed environments. Great effects, great lighting, really detailed environments. fairly good animations. Demon Souls remake. Alright, let me know what you guys thought of Demon Souls and everything I said as well. Do you agree with what I said? Do you not agree with what I said? What did you think of me introducing some of the more technical concepts and explaining them? It's obviously difficult for me to pick out what to explain because, you know, in this case I was like, oh, you know what, let's go through Bloom, but I think that's something that I might do in the future, which could be helpful to people watching. But if you ever have any questions, drop them in the comment section below. I'll read over them for the next video, and then that way I can, you know, if someone has a question about something or some particular rendering technique or something that they've done, maybe I can spot it in the next game that we look at and then use that as an excuse to talk about it, and, you know, we'll have a nice discussion. Anyway, thank you guys for watching. Please don't forget to hit the like button, and I will see you probably tomorrow with a new reaction because there's so much stuff coming out, as I said. Later guys, goodbye.